Hey, this is Zulem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Australia's own Ebony Bridges took to social media to react to the news that Shannon Courtney not only lost the Jamie Mitchell fight, before that, she lost the title on the scales. She stated, "I know I'm late to the party because I was off social media, break it to chat about my mate Shanny, but while I'm here, what the fuck? She said I needed to take the sport seriously and have respect for boxing and the quote-unquote champs because of my lingerie. Meanwhile, she loses her title on the scales. That's twice now she hasn't made weight. Embarrassing as fuck, especially as a champion. Looks like she didn't take the title serious. My last 4 fights, I had my period. Fucking sucks. But I gotta do what you gotta do to make the weight, because I have respect for the sport and my opponent."
Not a lot of people playing Shannon the violin these days.
Ever since Shannon blew the weight, lost the title on the scales, and subsequently went on to lose to Jamie Mitchell, there have been no shortage of individuals by way of social media laying into Shannon Courtney.
She's become a bit of a social pariah.
So much so that she's actually deactivated her Twitter account, though she's still on Instagram.
People are toxic.
Especially on Twitter, though that doesn't change that in some ways Shannon Courtney has brought all of this criticism down on herself, whilst sitting on a high horse, preaching to Ebony Bridges the values of being a professional athlete, being professional, not wearing lingerie and things like that, only for Shannon to lose her title on the scales before Jamie Mitchell could take it from her.
That's not professional.
Missing the weight isn't. Shannon Courtney has quickly become one of these fighters that you love to hate.
She should probably just embrace being the heel.
Just own it.
Yeah.
Seems like everybody hates your fucking guts. You might as well give them a reason to and enjoy yourself. And because so many people don't like Shannon, I feel like they're glossing over the knee brace she walked into that Jamie Mitchell fight with. I'm not trying to get sympathy for Shannon, you understand. I'm just saying that in the Jamie Mitchell rematch, she may have 2 good legs instead of just 1. Shannon is normally a more mobile, nimble fighter than what we saw this past Saturday.
Jamie Mitchell's got to be mindful of that.
Prepare for it. The spectators in what is this spectator sport can continue to take the piss out of Shannon, overlook that she walked into that fight with a rather sizable knee brace. It's very noticeable. They can look over that, but Jamie can't. Jamie's the reigning WBA bantamweight champion, and she has to plan around every scenario, any eventuality,
Including a healthier Shannon.
that may have 2 good legs under her the next time instead of just 1. She better plan around that if she wants to hang on to that WBA title.
Oh, she ain't out of the woods yet.
Junior middleweight news. Sweden's own Patricia Berghult is going to be returning to action late next month on the 27th against Olivia Belkacem. Olivia Belkacem, who sports a professional record of 10 wins, 2 losses, no draws with 1 knockout. Olivia debuted as a professional boxer way back when, in 2010. And she took a hiatus from the sport in 2011 after she was stopped by France's own monster puncher, Sophie Anne Mathies, one of the more monstrous punchers the sport of women's boxing's ever seen. She very recently returned to action in 2019. She managed to rack up 2 professional victories before losing to Belgium's own unbeaten Ocean Dirieu earlier this year. She's coming right off a loss ahead of this Patricia Berghult fight. And to make matters worse, she's about 40 years old. You look at the situation and it looks a lot like Patricia Berghult is not only the bigger fighter, but she's the younger fighter as well. Patricia Berghult, who has some inactivity she's got to shake off. She hasn't had a fight since 2019 when she decisioned Hannah Rankin. Patricia was supposed to have fought former IBF champion of Canada, Marie-Eve Dicaire, earlier this year on the undercard of what was supposed to be Oscar Rivas versus Bryant Jennings 2 for the inaugural Bridgerweight title, the inaugural Bridgerweight title fight. That was supposed to go down in the summer. That didn't happen. The fight got pushed back, and then Bryant Jennings, he walked away from the fight altogether. Marie-Eve Dicaire is now scheduled to fight someone else in December on the undercard of Better Beef versus Brown.
Perhaps her and Patricia will fight some other time.
Since their initial meeting fell apart, maybe they'll fight some other time, because they are 2 of the better fighters at 154 pounds, so it's only a matter of time before they bump into each other. For now, Patricia is fighting in November, and Marie-Eve Dicaire is fighting in December. Patricia is fighting Switzerland's own Olivia Belkacem. That's for the WBC interim title, and what that communicates to me is that if Patricia hasn't been elevated to full champion status, that would make Clarissa Shields this division's WBC champion. She's still the WBC champion until further notice, because if her title would have went vacant, they would have elevated Patricia to full champion status, and they still haven't.
Well, I think it's only a matter of time before they do.
That's because I don't think Clarissa's next couple of fights are going to be at junior middleweight. I think her next fights are going to be middleweight contests, since she signed a Sky and Boxer now, and they're building the Marshall fight. In all likelihood, we won't see Clarissa at 154 pounds for a while. Those titles she held there, they may go vacant. And at least one of them already has, the one that Hannah Rankin is going to be fighting for very soon against seasoned Maria Lindbergh, the WBA junior middleweight title. It's conceivable that the rest of those alphabet titles, they could soon go vacant as well. For now, Patricia Berghult, she's going to be fighting late next month on the 27th.
And that's for the WBC interim title.
I think the only thing working against Patricia is inactivity, but that aside, I like her chances against Olivia Belkacem. I think that Patricia will rack up another W and make her way to a world title at some point. In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Terence Crawford on Errol Spence. Like I said before, that fight has passed me personally. I felt like I did everything that I possibly could to try to make that fight happen. Everybody kept saying I'm chasing him. Yeah, I was chasing him, and he didn't want the fight.
We know, he wanted Mikey Garcia.
And he wanted Sean Porter. He thought those fights were more important, more urgent than a Terence Crawford fight. And we see how those decisions have aged. We see how it's all worked out.
Could the fight still happen?
Oh well, you never say never. Still an off chance that it goes down, though it ain't now what it was before, because a lot has happened since then. Errol was in a car accident, he suffered a detached retina more recently. He's not viewed as the same fighter that he was before the Porter fight. Terence Crawford was asked if he wants to outshine Errol Spence's win versus Sean Portier, to which he replied, "Who is he to outshine? I'm tired of everybody trying to compare me to somebody that's only had 2 belts in his whole career. He's talented, but there's levels. I don't feel like our fight should have took that long. He's gotten 2 injuries since then. Who knows if Errol Spence will ever be the same fighter that he once was when he was considered the boogeyman of the division." And Terence is just reiterating sentiments we've already discussed here on the channel. What did I just say? He's not viewed as the same guy that he used to be. Hypothetically speaking, if Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. were to meet in the ring 1 to 2 fights from now, the go-to excuse for his supporters, should Terence Crawford win, would be the car accident and the detached retina.
He was never the same.
For the time being, you might still be able to bump into 1 or 2 overzealous Errol Spence Jr. fans that'll tell you they think he's got what it takes to beat Crawford. But if Crawford were to beat this guy, I guarantee you, I fucking guarantee you,
They're gonna start talking about the car accident afterwards.
I'll tell you this much. Before Errol's retina got detached, and before he flipped that Ferrari, before all of this, I liked Terence Crawford to beat him because he is a more nuanced fighter that has competed at the championship level, having fought more championship level fights throughout 3 weight classes than Errol Spence Jr. Comparatively, Terence hit the nail on the head. There are levels.
Errol's fucking overrated.
Not telling you he's a bad fighter.
He's alright.
Telling you he's an overrated fighter. Ranked number 6 on ESPN's most recent pound-for-pound list ahead of guys that have done things that he hasn't. You know, Errol, he hasn't beaten more world champions than Teofimo Lopez, for example. The both of them have beaten 2 active reigning world champions apiece. Errol beat Kell Brook for the IBF and Sean Portier for the WBC, whereas Teofimo Lopez, he beat Richard Commey for the IBF and Vasil Lomachenko, a pound-for-pound alum at that time, for the WBO, WBA, and WBC franchise titles.
Teofimo's lineal. Errol isn't.
Teofimo's got the Ring Magazine title. Errol doesn't.
Why is Errol ranked ahead of him?
I don't know. In the last 2 years, Errol Spence Jr. has only fought 2 times. Doesn't look like he's going to get a fight in this year at all. You think about another guy he's ranked ahead of, Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor doesn't just have the Ring Magazine title, and he's not just lineal champion in his division. He is the undisputed champion of his division. Undisputed in his weight class. Yet, for some reason, the people at ESPN ranked Errol ahead of him, even though Josh is more accomplished than Errol comparatively, and he's fought more active reigning world champions than Errol. He fought Ivan Baranchyk, then unbeaten Ivan Baranchyk for the IBF. He fought Regis Prograrius for the WBA. More recently, he unified all the belts with unified champion Jose Ramirez, also unbeaten. I mean, every world champion that Josh Taylor has come up against was an unbeaten champion, whereas Errol's claim to fame is a battered Brook after Gennady Golovkin put him through the ringer, and Sean Portier, who was beaten by Kell Brook.
And Keith Thurman.
Don't misunderstand me. I think Sean Porter's a good fighter. I do. and I think it's a solid win for Errol, but those aren't the kind of victories, those aren't the kind of wins that make him head and shoulders
They don't.
above Teofimo Lopez or Josh Taylor. It just doesn't make sense.
The guy's fucking overrated.
So Errol is in possession of 2 alphabet titles. Well, so's Artur Better Beef, so's MJ Akhmadaliev. The winner of Murata versus Golovkin, regardless of who it is, they're going to be in possession of 2 world titles, and they'll have a stronger argument to be ranked as a pound-for-pound fighter than Errol does here today.
What the fuck sets him apart?
An editorial panel that keeps voting for him time after time, regardless of how hypocritical and nonsensical it is. These editorial panels that keep ranking Errol as a pound-for-pound fighter, you know, they're just as wishy-washy as your average boxing fan, though they're not supposed to be. They're pundits, thus they're supposed to be held to a higher standard, yet they exhibit the same logical fallacies. And listen, I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. If they've beaten the same as or more world champions than Errol, and they're currently in possession of more alphabet titles than Errol, they have something he doesn't, lineal status and Ring Magazine titles, why is he ranked ahead of them? What kind of logic goes into that decision?
Zero.
Errol isn't ranked as a pound-for-pound fighter on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. He isn't there. I agree with Terence Crawford. There are levels to the game, and the inflated vote of confidence that Errol Spence Jr. has been given by editorial panels over the years creates this illusion that he's a better fighter than he actually is. For having done what? Beating Fat Mikey on points instead of stopping him in dramatic fashion? I mean, could you imagine what people would have said if Cal Brock would have went the distance with Gennady Golovkin? If Amir Khan would have went the distance with Canelo Alvarez?
Or if Ragandiao would have went the distance with Loma.
After the fight, you had pundits writing about how Errol held the moon and the stars for pitching a shutout, a masterclass against Mikey Garcia, when what they should have been saying is, hey, you're a lot bigger than this guy. You're supposed to be some kind of boogeyman. You're supposed to be some kind of power puncher. So how come you couldn't knock this guy down?
Not like Mikey was fighting back.
He wasn't. Given Errol's height advantage, his reach advantage, what's supposed to be his destructive punching power by way of his body attack, all that jazz. You didn't figure that Mikey's going to go the distance, but he did.
So who's Errol that Terence has to outshine him?
It's not like Errol looked particularly impressive against Sean Porter. He didn't look good against that guy either.
He looked pretty damn human to me.
I think Errol's a good fighter, but he hasn't proven to be what people thought he would be at the level they thought he could reach. He just hasn't. And at this point, he just seems overrated to me.
Never mind, Wolf. There's respect. You got me fair and square tonight, that's it. I respect because I'm a man. Don't show sport. Don't show back forth. You're not fair and square. Listen, I've never cheated in my life. I play fair and square. He's got a bad hatred towards me, I don't know why. But let me tell you, he lost like a man tonight. He put me down 3 times to put him down 4. Great heavyweight fight.
Those were the sights and sounds immediately after this past weekend's fight. As you can see, Deontay Wilder, he still felt raw about everything. He was not ready to embrace Tyson Fury in
solidarity,
a gesture of sportsmanship, as it were, in what is this gentleman's sport. A lot was made of this.
Some people spent more time on it than I did.
It's been 5 days since the last installment of the Wilder versus Fury saga. 5 days, and perhaps those 5 days have allowed Deontay Wilder a bit more clarity, because he has since released this statement by way of his Instagram account. It reads, "Wow, what a hell of a night. I would like to first and foremost thank God for allowing me to give the world another part of me that's driven with passion and determination. I would like to thank my team and my fans for sticking by my side through this long process. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't disappointed in the outcome, but after reflecting on my journey, I now see what God wanted me to experience is far greater than what I expected to happen. We didn't get the win, but a wise man once said, the victories are within the lessons. I've learned that sometimes you have to lose to win. Although I wanted the win, I enjoyed seeing the fans win even more. Hopefully, I proved that I am a true warrior and a true king in this sport. Hopefully, we proved that no matter how hard you get hit with trials and tribulations, you can always pick yourself up to live and fight again for what you believe in. Last but not least, I would like to congratulate the Gypsy King Tyson Fury for his victory, and thank you for the great historical memories that will last forever. This is the first glimpse we're getting of Deontay Wilder, perhaps, potentially, making peace with all of this, making amends. This fight, this trilogy, has taken us all to very strange places. Deontay Wilder and Deontay Wilder's fans included, though myself, I'm not exempted. I half expected this all to be a fixed fight.
Deontay Wilder would have won. I would have had my suspicions.
I would have been very skeptical, very suspicious of what was really going on here had Deontay Wilder won the fight, because conventional wisdom often dictates that in boxing, the technician does better in a rematch, or in this situation, a trilogy. The technician, because he has more to draw from, as opposed to the bruiser, the puncher. And conventional wisdom dictated, at least for me, that Tyson Fury should win the third fight in similar fashion to...
I won the second fight.
That is conventional wisdom in boxing, folks. The technician has more to draw from, so the longer a saga goes on, the more it favors that technician. And that is how this trilogy, this third installment of the Wilder versus Fury saga, played out. Tyson Fury, once again, secured the W. And I don't know if this is what it took for Deontay Wilder to lose in this fashion, get another crack at this guy, then sit on it for a few more days after having suffered his second career loss, second defeat, to realize that perhaps there was nothing foul at work here.
Maybe all of this is what it took for him to see the light.
I didn't make much of Deontay Wilder still feeling raw about things immediately after the fight. I didn't. The only relevance of all of that, to me, as far as I was concerned, was it accented his inability to move on. And if he can't move on, he's going to stay locked in that moment, locked in that deep, dark place.
It'll be a splinter in his mind if he don't make peace with it.
And they're already talking about getting him back out there next year in either April or May for a rebound fight. They're saying he's not retiring. Well, if he's not retiring and he's going to continue on his career, he needs to move on. He needs to make peace with this.
It's the healthiest thing he can do.
For his own psyche, his own psychology, I myself still have my reservations as far as the physical state of Deontay Wilder as a fighter, having suffered those two back-to-back beatings in February of last year, and this one more recently in October.
He's not so old that he has to retire.
Though it's not just the age of the fighter we have to look at. We have to look at the physical state of the fighter and what the fighter has endured so far. Deontay Wilder's arm has been operated on more than 7 times. He took some really hard shots in his last 2 fights.
Yeah, that guy needs a break.
Some time off, time with family, spend some of that money he just made.
He needs to get himself centered.
Get himself in a good headspace psychologically. Because if he can, there are still big nights, big fights, and big purses out there for him. If he can recover.
Even though he lost, a lot of people liked his performance.
A lot of people were really happy with the show that both of these boys put on. So even though Deontay Wilder didn't get the W,
It's not the end of the world.
at least it doesn't have to be, because at minimum, all it really means is that Deontay Wilder got beat by the same guy. He might have fought him 3 times, and on record, he might have lost to him 2 of those times, but better still, it's the same guy.
He's a great fighter, so there's no shame in that.